Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Happy Monday to you, which is Monday, February 19th, coming to you for a business live mastery webinar. Different time, guys. Usually I'm doing this on a Wednesday. Figured I'd try another time slot to see if this was a better fit for you guys, as per some feedback I received from you guys. Let's go. Well, welcome. Good to be with you today. Let's go. Let's get into it, guys. Let's start this conversation. Welcome. My name is Cheston Bolgen with By the Books Consulting, the senior consultant here, founder, CFO. This is how you reach us, 888-4BTB now. That's 888-428-2669. And you can also go on the web and reach us at bythebooksconsultants.com or at youraccountingsuperhero.com. And this is my email address, guys, Cheston at bythebooksconsultants.com. And we help you with accounting, QuickBooks. We're pro-advisors with QuickBooks. We do tax strategy, tax planning. We do business advisory and business consulting. And this area we're talking about tonight is in the numbers area. This is a really good conversation we're going to get into today, guys, about keeping your profits as a trucking company. If you're a truck fleet owner, we're going to be talking about how to increase profits and cash through a specific means today. It's through expense management. But this is what we do, guys. So if you ever need any assistance with this, you need somebody to talk to about these areas in your business. Maybe it hasn't been working for you the way that you want it to work for you. You can definitely reach out by any of these means to go book a call. I recommend that you go on our website if you want to book a call and click on that free profit and cash flow analysis. All right. So quick disclaimer before we get started. The following is for educational purposes only and is not to be considered financial, accounting, or legal advice. Please consult your tax, accounting, or legal professional for specific advice. And, today, guys, I'm going to hop right into the conversation. We're talking about how to manage your expenses and boost profits. If you're a fleet owner, this is going to be how to increase your profits and cash flow, guys, through strategic expense management. Okay. Now, number one, I want to talk with you a little bit about this. Okay. So, hi. Number one. All right. One of the things that I want to talk to you about is being intentional. All right. So if you are not familiar with what that means, one of the things that being intentional really means is that we have a specific thing in mind. We're not reacting, for one. Being intentional means we're not reacting. And what does it mean to not react? A lot of times it can seem like situations and circumstances really dictate what you and I get to do out here in life. Well, I invite you to give that up and start creating something through intentions, okay? Which means that, you may think that you have no control over the expenses, like prices are high, fuel costs are high. Fuel costs are bouncing up more so now today. As of today, it's been trending back upward. So you may think that you have no control over, how you can manage your expenses. Maybe you hope there's a way, but really you have not been intentional about managing this aspect of your business. Specifically, have a structure and a strategy in place to make sure that you don't spend more than other people in the industry, more so than you want to spend in the industry. Okay. Now, there's always an action I can take. There's always something I can do, but it really starts with being intentional. All right. Saying, okay, this is what I want here, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of the situations, regardless of the market, whatever it's doing, I get a say in how this is going to go in my business and in my life. So be intentional. Okay. That's number one. And number two, once I create that, once I'm intentional, once I have something specific that I want to put it into the world in terms of results, then I honor that thing by executing on the actions that align with that intention. Okay. Matter of fact, I was on a call earlier today with one of my clients, and I've been working with this person for a little while, and it seems as though we've been giving them a lot of real good actionables, like to execute on, and for whatever reason, they have not been taking those actions. And the thing that's been missing here for him, guess what, guys? It's been the intention has been missing. He has not been intentional. He's reacting. He's bouncing around from thing to thing, idea to idea. But then there wasn't one thing put into place where he can actually come back to and honor over and over and over again. Okay. Now, I'm saying this because there's an opportunity for you and I. When we get intentional, especially in the area that we're talking about tonight, which is going to be expense management, really specific strategies and expense management. The only way that you and I can get results in this area is if we create an intention and honor that thing. We stick to it daily. It's going to take that. Well, we have an action we want to take, so go ahead and create that action and take it day after day after day after day, and then have that result as a consequence of that, right? That's what we all want, okay? So one, be intentional, two, execute, all right? So I just want to say that before we get started inside of this, all right? Because this is what's going to really make the difference. Number one, be intentional, which means I actually have a specific thing that I'm looking to do. There's a want, there's a desire, there's an outcome, which means I'm gonna save money in this area. I'm gonna cut costs in this area, and this is how I'm gonna do it. You're gonna honor that thing over and over and over again until that outcome is realized. All right, and hopefully that makes sense, guys, because that is the thing that's going to make the difference from this conversation, or else you're going to hear a lot of information. It's going to be good insight, and it's not going to make the difference. Okay. All right. So we're talking about this tonight. Manage your expenses, boost your profits, keep your trucking business profitable with efficient expense management. Okay. Now, when I was putting this together, I was looking at, what is it that we can actually share with you generically, or that's something that's going to make the impact in your business. Whoever you are, whether you're a small fleet owner, maybe you haven't even gotten your authority yet. Okay. You're leased on to somebody. Maybe you're even still a company driver thinking about leasing on, and you're kind of worried about, well, how am I actually going to make it out here? And then maybe you might have actually been there and have escalated and progressed to a position where you are an owner operator, right? And you actually know like your expenses, but you feel as though you lack control in terms of, what your outflow is going to be. Maybe you're leased on to somebody and they're deducted everything from your settlement, and you don't feel you have any control over there. And you may be looking to move into being somebody who has their own authority, and maybe you do have your own authority already. But it's like, man, I didn't expect to spend all this much. Like, I'm making this money, but it's going out the window. How do I keep it? All right, what do I do? All right, it's going to take, number one, the thing that I just talked about, intentionality, saying, okay, I'm done doing this right now. I'm actually going to find a solution to make sure that money stays in my pocket more so than what it has been over the last however long. Okay, so it's going to be a demarcation point, and that demarcation point can be today. We say, okay, I'm done right now, and this is what I'm going to do moving forward. I'm going to make sure that I'm not going to spend this much money in fuel when I don't have to, or I'm going to have a way to make sure I'm not going to spend so much in interest from borrowing money if I don't have to, right? Or I'm going to cut out whatever other costs inside of my operations if I don't have to, right? I'm going to talk about some specific things today. All right. And guys, hold on a second. I didn't put myself off. Yeah, I didn't put myself off of do not disturb for this call. Bear with me. So people will actually continue to call me if I'm still here. All right. Once you guys turn that off. All right. Beautiful. Now I'm back with you. All right. So now, guys, if you are watching this live and you have something that you want to ask a question about, if you have something you want to know specifically, you can write in the chat. I'll most likely get to it before we end the call. But if you have something specific you want to know about the conversation tonight, feel free. Just reach out wherever you're chiming in from. All right. So, yeah, it doesn't matter where you are in the journey of it, whether you're small or large, there's always a way where you can actually improve the performance through this managing expenses. So let's talk about this a little bit. All right. Now, some simple things that we're going to go over in this call. This is all we're going to go over in this call, guys. We're going to keep it simple so that you can go out here and do something today. All right. Number one, the thing that we want to really understand is control. Control process. All right. So what is a control process? A control process means that in running my business, I understand there's a process by which outflow happens, and it's not going to just happen as a reaction to situations and circumstances. It has to go through a procedure, if that makes sense. Okay, so who's going to actually have access to the way we spend money? Who's going to authorize how we're going to spend money? Who's going to prove it? Right? What methods are we going to use? Are we going to use a credit card? Are we going to use our business checking account? Are we going to use Comchecks? Are we going to use T-checks? What are we going to use to manage our outflow, and how are we going to prove and authorize the using of the funds? Right. So if you don't have this in place, like clearly outlined, like this method is how we're going to, this is the approach we're going to use. These are the methods we're going to use in order to have money come out of our business. Then you don't have this area under control. Hence the terminology control process. It is not under control until you have a control process. All right. So I've seen it in a lot of cases where, a company will go out here and they'll make money, but at the end of the day, they're like, well, man, what happened to all the funds? Where did it go? Yeah, that's what that feels like when you don't have a control process. When you have a control process, you know exactly where it's going. Like on a moment by moment, day by day basis, where all of your funds are going to. Like if you have a fleet of like 5 to 10 trucks, when each truck is due for their PM service, how much you're spending on that PM service. You've already approved it. It's already under wraps. You already know how that's impacting your bottom line. The platforms you're going to use to authorize the disbursement of the funds to pay for those PM services, right? Or if you have fuel cards, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. You know exactly what you're doing in that respect. Well, what's going to be authorized via fuel? Well, how are your drivers? Starting with, if you're an owner operator, your drivers begins with you as a single unit operator, right? How is each and every one of your drivers going to proceed and purchase fuel, maintenance, parking, tolls, hotels? What are going to be those processes that are in place that down to the letter that are authorized and standardized across the company? What are those processes going to be in your company to make sure that that you're not overspending? You have a lid on these things. You know exactly where money is going to go. You know exactly to the budget what you have for this particular aspect of your fleet operations, right? You know what it is, right? Because you have a system in place, all right? So it begins with that, a control process. Who's authorized? Who is going to be the authorizing person? What are going to be the methods of dispersing funds, right? And then which vendors, right, suppliers, are going to be authorized through those processes. So those 3 keys inside of it, who's authorizing it, what accounts, and what suppliers, those things want to actually be outlined for you before you go out here and operate. So if you're in a position right now where you have not yet been operating and you have not yet had a control process implemented, well, now's the time to really sit down and figure out what that control process is going to be. Even if it's just you, okay? Even if you don't even have your own authority yet, right? You want to start the process of thinking about this and putting these systems together so that when you start to scale, these are the things that you're going to adhere to with integrity, okay? And the control process. Well, you have that business bank account. You have a certain credit card account. You may have other accounts that you use. You may have that, the WEX account that you're using for your fleet. You may have that, right? But what is it going to be approved for, and what type of expenses? You want to know those. You want to write those out, and you want to adhere to those things. Okay, that's number 1. All right. So once we have that in place, then we're going to start looking at, well, how are we going to enforce these things, like these control processes? One is with trip plans. Okay. So you guys may be familiar with trip plans. Like we tell our drivers to create these trip plans, make sure that we adhere to that along the route. But maybe you've had freedom and autonomy to create your own trip plans and not really adhering to them in a way where it's going to make sense like when it comes down to your dollars in the bank at the end of the day, right? So if I'm going to enforce the processes that I'm putting in place, and one of the ways I'm going to use this, one of the ways I'm going to enforce this process is a trip plan. Well, I want to know, well, we have approved fuel stops, we have approved routes that we're going to use to make sure that number one, we're not going to overspend in fuel. Number two, we're not going to overspend in maintenance costs because we're not going to add any extra mileage to the truck or to the equipment. We're not going to add any extra inclines if necessary to the equipment to cause even more wear and tear on the equipment. Like if we're going up the Eastern Seaboard, if you're going up 81, 77, those routes can be treacherous if you're heavy, right? So maybe you have another route that you want to put in place to make sure you're not going through all the mountains, right? You stay on flatter land in certain areas. And you also know the fuel stops along the way to make sure that you're not overspending in fuel. Maybe you have relationships with certain vendors where you can spend less money with those vendors through certain relationships, right? So you want to make sure that you communicate this, number one, to your drivers, or even if you're just one, make sure you have this written for yourself, planned out for yourself. Well, how am I going to approach this trip? What's my trip plan to make sure I'm not going to overspend here? Okay. That wants to be a major consideration. Guys, I can't tell you how much of an impact this makes over the course of a year. You're talking tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on how many you have in your fleet. All right. Just by making sure that the trip plan is in place. All right. You have certain people, certain suppliers that you authorize. You're not going to any other suppliers, any other fuel stops, but these specific ones. That can save you tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. All right. Like right now, you'll have more money each month because of that. Okay. Now, how do you do this? How do you communicate this effectively? If you're more than a fleet of one, well, you want to have systems and structures in place that make it easy. All right. So we talk about technological integrations. All right. And I want to bridge this section and the next section together so that you have an idea of what this would look like when you're going out there and basically having people honor this structure. You're communicating the structure, right? Guys, I'm big on technology, for one. There's always a way and there's always a solution. There's always a way and there's always a solution. Okay. And with today, it's 2024. There's so many technological advances that we have today that we can use that weren't available even 10 years ago, to help manage the fleet. Now, when we implement some of this technology, even at the smaller levels, it'll create an ease and a flow, and it'll also create more money in your pocket. Right now, a lot of you, well, everybody is really mandated to use ELDs, and a lot of the ELD software today allows for pristine fleet management, right, and communication, right. So, man, technologically, if you're leaning on these items, you can communicate with your drivers and promote certain activities and have certain activities rewarded and certain activities, not rewarded, to encourage the adherence to what you want to have happen in that fleet. What do I mean? Every day communicate, man. Every day communicate. Okay, have you done your trip plan today? All right. Do you know exactly what route you're taking today? How many miles you're driving? What fuel stops you're going to stop at that are approved by the company? Right. Just something like that as a reminder on a daily basis without even being specific goes a long way. All right. But if you don't have that in place technologically, if you don't have the automations in place to remind drivers, for number one, for this part of it, and make sure they, don't idle the truck and then honor the trip plan and honor the fuel stops, right, as per their agreements. Like if you have those agreements in place, like that one process alone will save you money in your fleet. Okay. But if you don't have that process, you're going to be leaving money on the table right now. All right. Now, beyond that, like, it's not just the drivers you want to train for this. Like if you have a larger fleet and you're working with dispatchers and people that are communicating with the drivers, you want to have the processes in place through the technology to help train your dispatchers and your people that are going to communicate with your drivers on honoring what the expectations are via the trip plan. Okay. Now, all that can be done like seamlessly and effortlessly with certain technologies, right? If you have a TMS, in addition to your ELD, like a lot of you guys are using, it used to be Motive is what it is now. Motive is what it is now, right? So Motive is pretty good technology for that, all right? In terms of being able to communicate to your drivers and see everything that's going on in your fleet. But in addition to that, if you have a trucking management software to integrate with everything that you're doing, that communication becomes even more powerful. Now you can automate things. You can, like communications anyway, you can automate communications. You can have messages that are templated for your dispatchers, and you can really have an operation that's geared toward, honoring your control processes in your business. Okay. So technology in that respect is very, very helpful. In another way, we talk about tech integration. Approving and authorizing expenses. Yeah, I got that. I got Nancy. I think you just communicated. You have Motive and like them, but they don't integrate with your software for your loads with your TMS, right? The trucking management software that you're using. And sometimes, guys, we gotta do what we can to bounce from one thing to the other. Ideally, what I would like to see is that everything is integrated into one hub. And a lot of times that's not going to be the case, right? But you want to have your system. You want to have your system as such where you can have that full visibility of where your fleet is all the time, right? So that you can, and also be able to have that communication go out seamlessly to each one of your drivers and your dispatchers, right? Templated messages, communication that reinforces the control processes is what we want to have here inside of this section. Okay. Now, the other thing about technology in terms of being able to manage your outflow, time savings, guys. There are technologies like Bill.com, there's Ramp, QuickBooks Online. There's so many other technologies out here that we can use to make sure that when we're invoicing, when we're actually receiving invoices rather from our suppliers, that these expenses are approved in a certain way. We work with trucking companies that are in the energy industry out in Texas, and they're doing, they have like 70, 80 trucks on the fleet, and each one of those units, those trucks, they get invoiced every day, right? So you're talking about 70 to 80 invoices per day. And now it's a lot to be doing if you're thinking about manual data entry for, for your suppliers sending invoices for jobs that they do out there, because they have the suppliers that provide for them to produce the jobs. So you have that end of it that they get from their suppliers, and they have the other end of it that they're invoicing out to their customers, right? Now, it becomes a major headache, and it becomes something where we're losing money because we just don't take the time to see exactly what's going on with the outflow or the inflow. But what if we had the automation inside of it to allow us to see, okay, this is a repetitive customer and their invoices typically go like this, or this is a repetitive supplier and usually their invoices go like this, right? So just by them emailing or receiving emails of those particular bills from their suppliers, information can be populated into these technologies so that you don't have to waste the time entering the information manually. You can just say, okay, do I need to approve this? Is there something here that's off a little bit about the job? That we get everything that we needed in, all the bills there, all the documents associated with it there? It saves time, and it saves you a lot of money, is what I want to say. Because I've seen it where companies will go out here and spend extra money, like twice as much, on services because they lack this process, they lack the integrity of what some type of technology like this will deliver. The technology is consistent. Human and manual entry is subject to human error. All right. So the less that we have to touch it ourselves, the more accurate and the less money that we lose. Okay, if that makes sense. Right. So I want to invite you to consider that if you don't have all the technological integrations in place to have you set up to win this way, like automatically, you may want to consider doing this for your fleet, right? For one, you'll buy back your time, all right, because you don't have to do a whole lot of manual entry, and you may not have to pay all the extra staff, because One person can do a whole lot more now, right? That's what they were dealing with. Their staff was sitting there doing a whole lot of manual entry every day. But with technology, they don't have to do that, right? They can cut back, and you can save, um, a full year as a salary on that as a fleet owner. You don't have to hire anybody else, and you can scale, right? Sometimes you're worried about capacity. Well, how many can you actually do? How many invoices can you send off? How many bills can you actually process administratively right now? Because you just lack the manpower and the forces behind that. Well, now you don't have to worry about those things because the technology takes place of that, especially with how AI is taking over today. All right. Hopefully that makes sense, guys. The other thing about this, all right, that we want to take a look at, once we have the technology in place, and guys, I don't want to go too fast as to step over anything in this conversation. I really want you to get like the power of this inside of the conversation. All right. The power is going to be inside of, number one, the decision, like the thing I spoke about in the beginning. What's the intention? And number two is, okay, what are the processes I'm going to put in place? And number three, how am I going to execute on it, like every single day with integrity? Okay. Like that means, well, what technology am I going to use? How am I going to communicate my trip plans to myself and my drivers, right? And then again, right now we're going to talk about fuel cards, right? Because a lot of carriers, especially small carriers, are leaving money on the table because they're not implementing fuel cards. They're just using, they're using the basics. Maybe they're using WEX, EFS, but they're not getting the deep discounts as they would get by using some other another fuel card that could also be an EFS, or it could also be like the same thing, Fleet One, right? Fleet One discount on that. All right. There's so many opportunities out here in terms of being able to not pay as much at the pump. And a lot of us are used to hearing like maybe a pilot card will get you like 10 to 15 cents off the gallon, or a Love's card will get you about 10 to 15 cents off the gallon. But what if you can get $1 off, right? There are fuel cards that allow you to get $1 off the gallon, 80 cents off the gallon, and what kind of a difference would that make to your bottom line about the money that you get to keep in your pocket, right? You can leverage the deep discounts with the right partners, right? Now, a lot of the times what happens is we don't think about these things because we're so busy operating the company. We're really good at being the chief operating officer, but not necessarily the CEO, right? CEO or the CFO, they're looking at ways to make sure that the operation is running in a way where it's delivering a specific outcome, like all the time. It doesn't, like looking for those opportunities to cut the costs, right? Like significantly, and still deliver and generate the revenue at a high degree. Okay. But this is one of those strategic moves that we can play to cut that cost, right? Not only that, like we're talking about like fuel costs and other expenses, like maintenance is a big deal. Like maintenance, especially if you're a smaller fleet, you don't really know, you're kind of out there. You don't think like when you're going to incur like a breakdown maintenance wise. And then you do know, because that's a part of the business. We know that we're going to suffer breakdowns. It's just that we don't know when. But if I operate in a way where I'm putting all these other pieces together, I'm saving money in fuel, and then then I'm actually taking into consideration that there's a direct cost for me taking a truck and moving that wheel around 1 mile, right? That wheel turns 1 mile. There's a cost associated with it. Number one, fuel. Number two, maintenance, right? Those costs are direct every time the wheel moves. Well, I want to understand what that cost is and then operate the business that way, right? So what does that mean? Well, it means, if I have a certain particular vehicle, I'm going to put away 15 cents for every time that wheel turns 1 mile for maintenance, right? That's what I'm going to do. Now, if I haven't been doing that up until now, well, now is the best time to start doing that. 15 cents every time that wheel moves. Maybe you have a vehicle that's more prone to breakdowns. Well, you want to make sure you up that percentage-wise, like we weight that to a higher percentage of what you would do. Maybe you want to put away 20 cents per mile or 25 cents per mile, right? And you want to do it in a way where it's not going to break you personally. But the idea here, guys, is to get the company strong. When the company is strong, everything else will be strong from there, right? So that's going to be the first priority, okay? All right, so there's more to this conversation, guys, and I'm at the 7:30 mark. This is a 30-minute conversation, right? I want to deliver some more to you guys. I might actually continue this conversation next time. All right. It seems like Monday night might be a good night to do this and share this information with you guys. Okay. So I want to continue this conversation. I want to talk about the advanced stuff next time on this call, like the market trends and how to make sure you're keeping more money in your pocket. Because there are ways for you to look at the market and say, okay, well, I understand that market's going to be this way. So this is how I'm going to operate my fleet with consideration that the market's going to be this way. So I just know that I'm going to win no matter what. All right. So thank you, guys. It's been great being with you. See you next week. I'm going to keep this going on a Monday night. Take care, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.